So first things first, who are you, what's your role, and where do you work?
Yeah, hi, I'm Alex Kestner. I'm a principal product manager with the Amazon EKS team.
What 3 emerging Kubernetes tools are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so I'm biased. I always keep an eye on the Carpenter project because it's something that I launched a few years ago. So whether that's the new features that are coming out through the project or are kind of the various ways that we're seeing it becoming more and more embedded in the community, it's one that I very closely keep track of. The others are more emerging proposals from various special interest groups in the broader Kubernetes community, specifically the workload API or pod group API proposals that will help with large AI training workloads or batch processing, gang scheduling jobs, and then also the dynamic resource allocation proposals, which will be critical for how customers leverage all of the various kinds of accelerated infrastructure that's available.
Most developers don't think about the Kubernetes control plane. It just works. But when does it become a bottleneck?
Yeah, so the control plane is absolutely meant to be just invisible and in the background for the vast majority of customers. But when you start to hit the scale of thousands of nodes in your clusters, tens of thousands of requests through the API server, the control plane becomes a real challenge to operate.
What signals tell a platform team they've outgrown the standard control plane?
So I think the one that's the most kind of critical to watch is API server request latency. As that starts to grow, you're getting that sort of initial signal that there's something that might be worth paying attention to. Other things I like to look at are around the API priority and fairness sort of metrics. These are things that help you understand whether or not different kinds of requests are struggling to get to be completed effectively. Other kind of obvious signals are around the etcd database size. If that's starting to get filled up, you know that you're going to have a problem relatively soon.
EKS recently announced the ability to pre-provision control plane capacity. What does that mean in practice, and what changes for teams running at scale?
Yeah, so the provision control plane is a key tool for customers that are operating at particularly large scale, so like large number of nodes, or really busy clusters where there's a lot of things coming and going. What this lets you do is set a baseline for the infrastructure that we use to power the EKS cluster control plane so that you always know you're going to have the capacity needed to meet the demand of your cluster at any time.
What use cases have you seen where teams realized they needed pre-provisioned control plane capacity?
So it's 2026. Of course, AI/ML is the top use case that we see this being a really critical capability for customers. But there's a lot of more kind of interesting ones that maybe you wouldn't think of as being really good candidates for provision control plane. The one that I think is the most interesting is disaster recovery. Let's say you're running an active-passive setup across regions through different clusters, and suddenly something has gone wrong and you need to flip over to that passive region. The amount of load on the control plane and the API server will really dramatically increase at that moment. Provision control plane will make sure that you have the capacity needed to complete that recovery successfully.
Okay, a bit of a bonus question. Yeah. You just had a fireside chat with Nana. Can you just give us a summary of the things you were speaking about?
Yeah, so I spoke with Nana about EKS Auto Mode. Auto Mode is a feature that we launched at reInvent in 2024 that dramatically simplifies the operational work required to run Kubernetes clusters and production scale. So EKS has always offered a managed control plane for Kubernetes clusters. That's now complemented with EKS Auto Mode's managed data plane. So all of the things that are essential for running Kubernetes clusters, all of the controllers for compute, storage, and networking, and then also the instances themselves are now something that we can take responsibility for so that you can focus on shipping your applications.
Kubernetes turned 10 years about 2 years ago. What should we expect in the next 10 years to come?
So I wish I could tell you that. If I did, I might have a bit of a different job. But the reality is that I expect Kubernetes, and particularly the infrastructure powering Kubernetes clusters, to become more and more invisible and backgrounded as customers get to focus more on the applications and things that really delight their users.
What's next for you, Alex?
I'm here at KubeCon hearing all about the problems that customers are having, which is the most useful thing for me to hear as a product manager. Meeting with customers, talking with them about how they're using EKS and the things that we could bring to them in the future to make their lives better.
How can people get in touch with you?
So LinkedIn is the best way to reach out. Search for Alex Kestner at AWS on LinkedIn.